And welcome back to Meeting of the Minds. Today I'm here with the great Mike Amine. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here. Great to be with both you guys. I've been following you, you and your brother there for quite some time, and you guys are doing some great things, and really a shout off, and I'm honored to have a conversation with you today.
Thank you. Absolutely. We're honored to have you also. We were just talking about, we started getting into it even before we kicked in with the interview, but about, you were saying that successful people, there's a common denominator behind all of them. Talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into your story, your journey.
Yeah, so, you know, you hear of the greats like John Wooden, and these are all non-wrestling, of course, and I got to start with them, but the whole idea of what, you know, both John Wooden and some of the ways that he approached the game of basketball and really the way he approached life, very similar to, you know, a short life of Vince Lombardi and his greatness with the Green Bay Packers. But, you know, I started reading a few of their books way back when it wasn't, you know, necessary, I guess is the best way. But back in the early 90s, when I was just starting off my career and pretty much closing the chapter of my wrestling life, I started getting inspired by these great coaches and these great leaders. And, you know, one right after the other, you know, the common denominator of success was somewhat uniform in the way that they approached the game, but also the game of life. And I took that with me because I think to be inspired by some of the great leaders is necessary in order for you to obtain your goals and your dreams. And it all really starts with the thoughts and, you know, what you think about, as I always tell people, what you think about every day and what you wake up to is what you eventually become. So unfortunately, if you think you're a loser, you're going to end up a loser. But if you think you're a winner, yes, you're going to have some challenges and obstacles along the way. But the right mindset, you know, you can move mountains with it. And these guys were really the foundation of great coaches and great leaders. Those guys could have probably led any Fortune 500 company to greatness. And so I was inspired by both of those coaches. And then along the way, as I was transitioning into a more defined leadership role, I ended up reading the book Good to Great, and it changed my way and changed my approach to, and the simplicity of it all, and how there was only a few, you know, great leaders out there, despite what you heard about some of these companies. Once the leaders stepped away, you know, the companies kind of fell apart. And the great leadership, to be a level 5 leader, you need to kind of make sure that your approach was adoptable, and that good leaders and great coaches create other great leaders and other great coaches. So to be, you know, selfless and to be able to, you know, use and give everything you have. And we'll get to the wrestling part and how you can, you know, use that type of approach to kind of create greatness within your high school program or your college program. And, you know, to me, that to be that level 5 leader has been something that I've always aspired to kind of be, to say, hey, if I get hit, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, that no matter what, this organization must live on, and sometimes better than where I left it. And that's the importance of that level 5 leadership. So, you know, it just goes without saying that all the things that, you know, great athletes and great professionals and great leaders, there's such a common denominator. It's just a different approach to get there from time to time. But the idea of hard work, perseverance, and having, you know, clearly defined goals with the right type of attitude and mindset, it's going to take you a long way.
Oh, yeah. Those two leaders you brought up, the John Wooden and Vince Lombardi, I don't know if you remember at the turn of the century, they did Sports Century for ESPN. They named them the number 1 and number 2 coaches of the 20th century. And I think Dan Gable was top 10 on the list also. Yeah,
and we'll get to Dan Gable because he's another, you know, phenomenal leader. And again, some of the things that he accomplished in the sport of wrestling, as I always say, that very few coaches, no matter what sport they coach, were able to do what he was able to do at Iowa. And he still continues to inspire people. And it looks like you talk about a devotion to wrestling. It's Dan Gable. He absolutely depicts that, and he's another guy that you really want to look up to and watch what he does. Not always as he says. Well, listen to what he says, but watch what he does and the way he approached, you know, his mindset and the way he approached his wrestlers, and 100% belief in anybody he recruited. And even as I recall of being fortunate enough to have wrestled against him my senior year, and and bringing down Iowa after 17 years. That was a team effort, but I got to know him a little bit, and I actually had a few beers with him not too long ago at the one of our coaches, Dale Barr, got inducted to the Hall of Fame, and Dan was there and had a few beers and kind of picked his brain. Unbelievable, what just the way he approached, wrestling, and I asked him just a real quick, what was his secret to like recruiting and that sort of thing. He said, he wanted to hear, the guys he was recruiting, they want to win a national championship their freshman year. That was that, the importance of having a real high goal early was really important, and that they were willing to sacrifice and do everything they could to get to that national championship. And that was kind of the mindset and belief they had at Iowa back when they were the power. They're a powerhouse today under the Brands. But then again, what did Gable do? He recreated level 5, leaders, and you can see the Brands brothers are doing a great job now. So, absolutely.
And I think about good to great. Didn't that include the story of Frank Becker, the baseball player? Was that chapter
yeah.
where he became like kind of like a Mr. Hustle, almost like a Pete Rose, just always just acting the way he wanted to be, right?
Correct.
That's because you could control your actions. You can't necessarily control the random thoughts that come in your head.
Correct.
Of course, we do mindset training, but you have to
sure.
act hard.
Yep. Yeah. You really do. And the importance of, you're taking your, it all begins with the mindset, right? And if you can conceive it, you can believe it. So you got to conceive, to believe, to achieve. But the achieve part's what's most difficult. Everybody wants to be a champion. Nobody wants to work for it, right? Everybody wants to be Michael Jordan. Nobody wants to practice like him. And obviously he's another just a phenom of the way he approached the game of basketball. It wasn't just talent. There was so much more to it than just the talent. And the things that he was able to do on the court was because of his work ethic and because of what he did to rally the team and win those championships. So there's just so much to learn from other sports and other great leaders. And that's kind of the way I've approached it. I've been very fortunate, and I will call that in some cases lucky, but we prepared for a little bit of that luck, and the rest of it, obviously you leave to chance and goodwill. But we, as a family, have surrounded ourselves with people like yourselves, who think, big, and they dream big, but they're willing to act big and put the actions behind that mindset. And it's the day-to-day. It's the things you don't want to do that are very uncomfortable, and you do them often enough, then they become a reality, and they become, your dreams all of a sudden become true, so.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because when you watch the documentaries on athletes a lot of times, or the 30 for 30 on ESPN, how they used to have it, or movies, you'd see like predominantly the success on the field or success on the mat, but you don't always see all the adversity. They might make mention of it. They might show a training scene here and there, but they don't show just all the time and the preparation that went into it. So a lot of kids, when they're younger, they look at it, they see the success. They don't see
Correct.
all the dogged hard work and the sacrifice
Sure.
and the discipline. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you start to interview these guys, and they start to show the vulnerability. I remember, hearing Jordan Burroughs on the Cave Talk podcast, and one of the real interesting things that I'm like that gave me tremendous respect for him was not about his wins. It's how he took his losses and how he handled his losses. And everybody, I always say, you're gonna, and I tell the boys that, and I tell Marissa, our daughter, that you're gonna get punched in the gut. It's not that you get punched in the gut and you get knocked down. It's how many times you get it punched in the gut, kind of like Rocky, and still, come up standing and swinging. So he showed his vulnerability, and he was able to kind of share with us the story after the 2016 Olympic Games and what happened on the cab ride home, and just to kind of bring everybody up to speed. But the first time around is all the paparazzi and unbelievable waiting for him at in California to Los Angeles airport, and got down to Jay Leno and got on to get some pretty much big time TV. And then the second time around, he's expected to win it, ends up not doing well, not having his best tournament. And that just goes to sometimes you can put in your all and sometimes not get the results you're looking for. And he says, he literally had to, nobody was at the airport. He ended up flying back to, I think, Omaha or something like that. And nobody was at the airport waiting for him with any signs. He actually had to get a cab ride home. And it just showed you, here's a great champion who really leads by example that everybody looks up to. who also got punched in the gut. And he was able to be resilient enough to still deal with it. And it humbled him. So everybody needs that. You know, you start to read your own, and I always talk to the boys about this, the importance of just read enough about your success, but put it away. Because if you start to read those headlines and those news stories, they give you this false confidence and it brings you down. So I would say, you know, put that away until you get my age, and then you can kind of go back and brag a little bit, you know.
That's it.
But you got to put those articles away from time to time, and you have to persevere and not read your own print. And it's just not a matter of if, it's when it happens. The best, sometimes, again, they put all the effort in, they put all the work, they put the sacrifices. And again, you just start to see these great champions, especially, you know, again, on the wrestling mat, and the sacrifices they have to make with their families, their jobs, their careers, you know, their money, their lifestyle, sometimes, you know, not staying in the most desirable hotels and traveling to not the most desirable countries, and all the things that these guys do to just, again, win a medal that doesn't always give you fame and fortune, you know, but it gives you tremendous, I think it gives you a tremendous track to run on, because, you know, it's like Dan Gable said, right? Another great quote from his is, you know, once you wrestled, everything is easy, right? And so that's what it does. It builds that foundation. So.
Absolutely. So many great points you hit up there. Like you said, the vulnerability. I remember seeing Jordan Burroughs speak at a camp, and he said that his freshman year of college, he had something like a 500 record, maybe a little bit more. You know, he was a high school state champ in New Jersey. Sure. And his freshman year of college, he said, maybe I'm not cut out for college wrestling. Thought about quitting. And how many athletes do we see? They think that, and then maybe they quit. You never know who could have been the next Jordan Burroughs if they would have kept going.
Well, I was going to share, you know, I like to kind of like, and I don't read books cover to cover. I think my ADHD kicks in, but I get pretty much the premise of just about every book I pick up, and I read enough through it to kind of get the messaging. And there's a book called 212, and it just talks. This really kind of speaks volumes of what you just talked about, the importance of that extra 1% effort. And just, you know, sometimes the greatest of the greatest of the greats were just about to quit, and then all of a sudden, you know, something happened, and then that something happened kind of what gave them that edge to really find all their success. And that was really what it comes down to. It's just that 1 degree, that added effort, just about when you're about to quit, but you persevere anyway, and all of a sudden you start to find yourself. And you start to find your way. And then all of a sudden you start to understand all those sacrifices, all those setbacks, all those heartaches. They all kind of, it all makes it worthwhile, you know, so.
Absolutely. I never read the book, but Zeke Jones sent our team that video at the University of Pennsylvania. Got my mug here. And
Love it.
And he sent that over to us that, you know, water boils at 212.
212, so yeah.
That's right. So that was an excellent thing right there. And big shout out to Cave Talks over there. We'll drop a link in the YouTube show notes so everyone could check that out. They're doing great things. Tell us. Yeah, go ahead.
Tell me. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, tell us a little bit about, you know, your background, how you grew up, how you got into wrestling. Yeah.
So, you know, so it really kind of all started, you know, really with our dad. Our dad was just a great man. And, you know, I always love to kind of talk about him because I am who I am today because of, you know, I think the upbringing that we had through the efforts of our mom and dad. My dad got the opportunity to wrestle 2 Olympic Games. And growing up, I really didn't learn about that until I started wrestling myself. My older brother, Chuck, never wrestled. And what was interesting is that it just, we left the old country, as they would say, back in 1967. So I was just about a year and a half old. And moved to the U.S. And my dad, you know, saw this land as an opportunity. He had, you know, I think visited as a young child and knew this was the place to be, even though that, you know, Lebanon was good. The U.S. was just a little better from the standpoint of giving people the opportunities and really the freedom that everybody so often enjoys every day. So this is the greatest country on earth, not only according to my dad, but also according to me. And I always look forward to coming home. But my dad, you know, created a good life for us. We're a blue collar. He was a butcher by background. You know, we kind of grew up maybe scrapping in the backyard, just myself and my two younger brothers. And just like being mischievous boys, we started channeling that energy onto the wrestling mat. So when I was 10 and my brother was 9 and my younger brother Ralph was 6, we all kind of started with the Van Dyke Wrestling Club. And that was pretty much the start of our chapter, the beginning of the first chapter. And I wasn't much of an athlete. My brother Sam was a much better athlete. So I decided to say, okay, let me give this wrestling a shot. We were kind of screwing around with my dad from time to time. And then, I had tremendous success right out of the gate. And obviously when you find something that you become good at, you become a little bit more inquisitive, like, hey, how good can I get? And I just stuck with it and persevered. And eventually, I landed a scholarship at the University of Michigan by winning a state championship at a pretty tough weight class, 145 pounds. And what was interesting, and by the time I got to Michigan, I started putting on some size, and I continued to grow. So they recruited me to be the 150-pounder at Michigan, and I ended up not being able. I won my wrestle off as a true freshman against a pretty formidable opponent named Tony Latorra, but I couldn't make that weight. So I moved up to 158, and I kind of went back and forth with that starter. But, you talk about a setback, but I went there, and it was a difficult school, and I don't think I was prepped the way from my study habits that I should have been. And I became academically ineligible, even though I could have, been in the starting lineup. So I kind of took a redshirt year and really kind of due to my own actions and say I take full responsibility. That just goes to show you when you approach college, you got to, have this life balance between wrestling and academics has to be your priority. And I don't think I made it a priority. I just thought I could go there, and I was wrestling really tough. I ended up 13-5 as a freshman, true freshman, which isn't a bad record, and could have made the lineup, but academics pulled me back. And so I got my act together. I had a good, long, hard talk with Steve Frazier, who just got done winning the Olympic gold medal. And, he really was a great mentor for me and a great workout partner for me. But I got to talk to him and the late, great Joe Wells from Oregon State, who also kind of lit fire underneath my butt to kind of stay focused. And the deal that I had made with myself and with my coaches is that I wouldn't miss class again. And I didn't. So despite meeting a girl who would eventually become my wife, I was literally very committed, and the big word's committed, to my academics. And I finished just under a 3-point, my college career with just under a 3-point. But the importance of that lesson was that as I began college and I started really kind of understanding the importance of goals, I wasn't really writing them down. So I started really defining what I wanted to do and really kind of my why back then of, I wanted to be a national champion. And I didn't know that if I had, didn't know that maybe had the natural raw talent to do that. But I knew I had the work ethic. And so my goal was to outwork everybody. And my coach, Dale Barr, would tell me, he says, the secret to success was to work while everybody else is playing. And you don't want, you don't want to be the 3 Ben brothers. He had it in his office as, should have been, could have been, and would have been. So I didn't want to be any of those Bens. So I really did, put my actions behind my goals. And I had a really good run in college. I was the senior captain. I was also a junior captain. I qualified for the NCAA's 3 years, the 4 years that I was there. And, had a pretty good run. I had over 100 wins, college wins. I think it was like 116 or so at Michigan. And, so those are all proud moments. I ended up in the NCAA finals. Again, what's that?
Unseated.
Yeah, unseated. Yeah, unseated. So it just really kind of talks about the importance of mindset. There you go again, and the importance of belief. When I entered that tournament, I really felt invincible. I felt that nobody was tougher than Mark Chiarella and Joe Wells and Steve Frazier. And I was competing with those guys every day, and even Dale Barr on the mat, who was tough as nails. And if I could, roll around with those guys and take them down and turn those guys, there's nobody that I couldn't really handle. And so I went in with the mindset, even though there's a lot of people that were doubting me, I didn't doubt me. And that's the most important thing. Never doubt yourself. Never have somebody tell you that you can't do something. And that belief has been instilled in my boys time and time again, as well as our daughter time and time again, and really in my wife. We all kind of have that. There's nothing we can't do. As long as it's important to us, there's nothing we can't accomplish. It might take us a little bit longer than usual, but we will, if it's important enough, we're going to accomplish that goal. And so I had those lofty goals, and then they continued after college. I started working out with Steve Frazier and training for the Olympics, and I kind of didn't know whether I wanted to kind of pursue freestyle or Greco, but I had to be realistic. I mean, I had Kenny Monday and Dave Schultz at 163 pounds in freestyle, so as much as maybe I wanted it, I mean, that's pretty tall order when you got a world champion, an eventual Olympic champion, and then a defending Olympic champion at that weight. So it was pretty deep, but I actually enjoyed Greco-Roman, so I started training. And I had a pretty good run. I ended up beating Gordy Morgan, who was the Olympian, right before the trials. And then I beat him at a tournament and at the National Open, I ended up fortunately losing to him. And then coming back between the National Open, I ended up fourth in the National Open, qualified for the world team trials. And while training for the world team, I busted up my ribs and I ended up breaking my ribs, and that was a long recovery. So unfortunately, long story short, I ended up getting into the world team trials. I taped my ribs. It wasn't the same. It wasn't 100%. And anybody could tell you, with a really, really bad knee or bad ribs or any sort of, dislocated elbow and stuff, it's pretty tough for the sport of wrestling, no matter how bad you want it. So I fell short. I had to, eventually come to grips because I'd been married now for 2 years. My wife ended up getting pregnant in 1992, late 92 after the Olympic Games, and my mom got sick at the same time. Literally the same night, my mom got diagnosed with 4th-stage cancer, and we were pregnant with our first. So, I need to kind of close that chapter and move on. And I accepted the fact that, hey, I didn't accomplish my Olympic dreams, but it was time for me to take that energy and take that focus and put it into my family, put it in supporting my mom. My mom lived about another 9 months after her diagnosis, and unfortunately she passed away in 1993, and then our daughter was born a month later. So the joy in my world really kind of occurred right after having to deal with a devastating death of a young mom who was 58 years old. And so I look at that, and I look at that adversity, and I look at that experience, and I'm better for it. I really am. I think the resiliency and the ability to kind of sometimes take a major setback, like losing a mother, and something that would really break your heart, and be able to use that to kind of help mold you. So I always, tell people, I said, sometimes we're molded by the scars. We're molded by the setbacks. And, sometimes we got to take those experiences and not look at them as negative, as looking at them as just part of life experiences. It's not something, of course, I would want anybody to ever have to go through. But I looked at that, and some of those scars and setbacks and heartaches kind of helped mold me. So from there on in 1993, I pretty much put everything into my family and in my business and raising our kids, and got to a point to where, I think it was important to have a parent at home. So we decided my wife would go on and be a stay-at-home mom while pursuing her MBA, in which I encouraged her to do. And so I'd come home a couple nights a week, and she'd go to school, and we made it work. And then, lo and behold, I started thinking about, getting our kids involved in sports. So our kids pretty much played just about every sport. I have to tell a funny story, but we got them involved with soccer, and the grittiest, I think, and toughest kid we had was our first, which her name is Marissa. She's 27 today, but if she would have wrestled, I think she would have been a phenom. I think she's the best athlete in the family, pound for pound, and she's living out in Chicago. But our boys picked up fencing, and you can only imagine Malik and Myles and maybe their personalities, but it's the only sport that we took them to, and the coach took my wife to the side and said, "Hey, don't bring your boys back." So they got kicked out of fencing, and because Lord of the Rings was really popular during that time, and they thought they were kind of like on a set of Lord of the Rings, and they probably should have followed some of the rules, but they decided not to follow. So they end up not pursuing fencing, but they pursued football, they pursued soccer. And I remember Mark Torella telling me that's important to, make sure your kids really enjoy sport and don't worry about wrestling. Don't worry about getting them into it real early on. I know some guys, like John Smith can start at 5 and become a world champ and become one of the best ever, but that doesn't always hold true for everybody. So I always my advice to people is make sure your kids are really good athletes. And that's kind of the advice Mark Torella gave me, and make sure that you just positive reinforcement. So kids stayed pretty athletic, including our daughter. She played travel soccer in her senior year of high school. And obviously the boys started wrestling about the same age, about 10, 11 years old. They started taking it a little bit more serious in the club wrestling, which I coached. And my brother Sam helped out. But we had a pretty good run with youth wrestling, but it wasn't like, you were expecting Malik and Myles to go out there and win, multiple national championships or win, any of the big tournaments out there, which are like Tulsa or anything like that. They didn't. But they were good wrestlers and they liked it and they loved the sport. So it was really between wrestling and football and even basketball they liked playing. And I said, well, look at me. This is what you have to look forward to. You're not going to be 270 and 6'3". So football is going to be a tall order. And unfortunately, as good as, you are on the basketball court, when it comes to that, you probably need a little more height and kind of need a little bit more skill set. But at some point, if you want to compete in college at any of these sports, and that's kind of conversation I had with both of them, you got to kind of see where what you're going to be really good at and what you're going to be very competitive. So they both decided on their own, without me forcing it, that they were going to wrestle. And what's interesting is Malik was a little over a 500 wrestler as an 8th grader. He was 4th in the state, kid state. And so he wasn't even a state champ, but he lit it up freshman year. He went on and he became all state, took 5th in the state, ranked number 2, pretty much the second half of the season, and at 112 pounds. And then, Myles was really right behind him as an 8th grader. And then, the rest is history. Myles, I think Malik was in the finals 3 times. He was a finalist and a state champ and a state champ, nationally ranked, did pretty good in some national tournaments. Myles followed suit by becoming a 3rd as I think sophomore, and a 2-time state champ, and then both those guys got recruited to a lot of D1 colleges. We did take some visits to various colleges, and they both pretty much had settled on Michigan because I think they got to have a great recruiting trip there. Again, without me forcing their hand, they had a great experience on campus. They had both Malik had visited Ohio State and has tremendous respect for Coach Ryan, what he's done, but I think it was a little too far from home. And, at the end of the day, he's kind of more of a homebody. Myles was less of a homebody, but really kind of wanted to evaluate his options. But we went out to Arizona State. We went out to Rutgers, all great programs, all great people, great guys and coaches. We went out to Purdue, Indiana, Northwestern. So he took like 4 or 5 recruiting trips. And then again, he decided on Michigan. And I wanted to make sure that he wasn't going there because of me or because of his brother. And I think that had something to do with it without him coming out and saying it. I think that his legacy was important, but I don't think it was the only factor. But he made his own decision to land there. And then, they had a really good run. And I look at those experiences, not only for them, but the community. And when I say, when you walk out there, you're not just wrestling for yourself. I know that you ultimately determine the result, but you're carrying your family name, you're carrying the university, all the fans, and you're pretty much your entire community, your high school. That's what you're carrying out there. So you got to make sure you conduct yourself, the way you should conduct yourself with respect and respecting your opponents, not fearing them, but definitely respecting your opponents. I don't like the antics. I just say, if you lose, it's okay to hate to lose. There's nothing wrong with hating losing more than you like winning, but get it out, walk out. If you have to walk outside and get out of the arena, get out of the arena, get out of there, but don't go out there and really kind of, again, because you're representing your family and your community, you gotta be professional about it. And a lot of people will point to a lot of guys who didn't handle that right. And you don't want to be one of those guys, and so, it's just, we've had such a great experience. And again, you know, I haven't been able to witness a national championship, you know, with Myles coming close, and then, you know, and Malik wanting to be an All-American and him not achieving his goals. But I wouldn't change the experiences for any of those things, because the experiences that as parents that we've had and how proud we are of both the boys is tremendous.
That's great. So many good points there. And like how you said, the balance between you could do anything, but at the same time having a reasonable assessment of what sport they were going to do. So it's both of those. Like some people are overly realistic and, well, you know, just that whole thing. And then the other people are just maybe too much like, hey, you could do anything without sizing it up. You need to have that balance. I think that's important.
Yeah. I think you have to have, go ahead. No, I think you have to have realistic expectations. I mean, you really do, of yourself, and really set goals you know that are going to challenge you like no tomorrow, but are not going to disappoint you, because maybe you just don't have the time, nor the resources, nor maybe the energy to really determine that this is the why you're doing it, you know. And it is it's difficult, because we set these expectations for a lot of these freshmen coming in to do the X, Y, and Z, and as, again, I just go back to my own story. Hey, you can be there, you can go there to be a good wrestler, and that may turn out the first semester or two, and then you get thrown out of school. What good has that done anybody? So it's you know, a lot of these kids, unfortunately, are not set the right expectations of what, you know, this work-life balance of what you have to do to get prepared for college. And then working with you guys and the importance of being able to manage the schedule, manage your mindset. So when you're wrestling, you're wrestling. But when you're not wrestling, you should be turning that off and turning on your academics. And then the same thing with your social life. Hey, you don't constantly talk about wrestling in your social life. You got to kind of find a way to separate that. And I always talk to people about that, the importance of shutting it off. And it's hard to do. If you're at work, you're working. When you're not at work, don't work. Try not to work. You know, with your family, spend time with your family and enjoy that. You're out with your friends and you're trying to be social, great. Don't talk about wrestling or work. So it really does kind of changing of the mindset's really important, and how you approach those things.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of different balancing acts like that. Like another point that you mentioned earlier was that, hey, you don't want to get involved in your own hype. We always tell the athletes, if you get the newspaper articles, put them in a shoebox. Don't look at it till after the season, so you're not getting caught at that moment. But then at the same time, you're also representing a lot of people too. So it's like one of the things we tell the athletes before they go out there is don't think about all the people they're representing. But at the same time, like you said, there's that balance, because when it comes to how you conduct yourself, you have to remember it's more than just you out there. So you don't want to have all that extra weight on your back, the pressure, like I don't want to let all these people down. But at the same time, you still need to be aware it's not just you. You're wearing a team singlet. You have a family name, all of that.
Yeah, right? And that's what I want to make sure that message isn't misconstrued about, hey, the one thing, again, Kyle Dake says, hey, you can't measure pressure. Pressure is something that we put on ourselves, but it can't really be measured. And the one thing that I just want to make sure that people understand, you know, you understand you're wrestling for your family and stuff, but at the end of the day, you know, it's still just a sport. You know, at the end of the day, it's something that it is not who we are. It's something that we do. And yes, we want to be really good at it because we put a lot of time and energy and purpose into it. But we don't want to walk out there on pins and needles. We got to stay relaxed. And some of the things I've learned along the way of the do's and don'ts is, you know, our jobs as parents and coaches is to make our sons and daughters, making sure that they feel relaxed, that they're not walking out there, that they actually having a good time when they're out there, that, hey, a lot of the work's already been done. Now you just got to go showcase it. And if you lose, you lose. You know, of course, nobody wants to see you lose. I'm sure you don't want to, see you lose. But at the end of the day, if it happens, it happens. If you gave 100% effort, because you can't give more than 100%. I know that people say 110. You can give 100% effort. If you give 100% of yourself, and the outcome is the outcome, then that's it. You got to leave it at that. You know, sometimes it's just not your day. Maybe it's a bad call. Maybe, you know, hey, it was a misstep. Maybe it's just, again, you made a mistake that unfortunately cost you the match. But you got to leave it at that. You got to leave it at that. I don't want people to kind of think that you have to walk out there because you're wrestling for your family, because you're wrestling for your team or your community. Do not take the weight of the world on your shoulders out on the wrestling mat. You know, so
it makes a lot of sense. Now talk about also that you were able to make the transition then from sports to business. Now there's a lot of people who are very successful in sports that don't transfer it over. Why do you think that is? What do you think separates those people?
Well, because I think what they were probably taught and what they learned through sports, they were not able to apply it. And that's the unfortunate thing that I've seen with a lot of wrestlers, that I would have assumed that once they had this national championship under their belt, that they were going to be super successful no matter what they pursued, just because they were going to throw that same mindset into their careers and into their families. And unfortunately, for a few of them, it's just been a disaster. I say more so than not, wrestlers make the best employees in the world. They make the best leaders in the world. And I might be a little biased, but you just don't have to take my word for it. You just ask Forbes magazine, you ask a couple major publications, and there's articles just written about the mindset of wrestlers. And the beauty of it is now we just got this women contingent that's also growing. So, men or women, we're going to have phenomenal leaders and just phenomenal citizens that are coming from the sport of wrestling. So that being said, we can't take it for granted. We got to learn the importance and the values and character that we learn on the wrestling mat and in the practice room. And we got to apply that. And if you apply it to the business world, and I learned this from Mark Torelli, because, kind of asked him, what's your secret to success? He goes, everything that I learned on the mat, I just apply to the business world, and the results are the results. And he's had phenomenal results, obviously, in his business venture. So I kind of looked at, obviously leaders, great leaders and great mentors of mine, and I kind of say, well, what were they doing? How do they apply it? And so I take the approach as you have to have, an incredible amount of discipline. You have to outwork, your competitors. I may not have the talent of my competitors. I may not have, the Harvard MBA that some of my competitors have. But I know that I can do one thing. And this is, going back to mindset. I know I can outwork them. And over time, I'm going to learn from some of the mistakes. And then over time, I'm going to learn a lot about myself. And yes, along the way, I'm going to learn some things, and I'm going to educate. And that knowledge is going to be power. And at some point, I'm going to set the bar, so high, it's going to challenge me. But if it's something that's important to me, why can't I do it? Why can't I be the best? So I've had a lot of, fortunately, and I'll call a little bit of a luck, but I think I prepared for that luck. But, over the years, I've surrounded myself with really good people. I've always had a really good management team around me. And against the whole opinion, or the whole idea of good to great, and make sure that, you surround yourself with people, get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus. The people who have poor attitudes, who have poor ethics, get rid of them. Take them out of your organization, take them off your team. I don't care how many Fargo championships they won. They could destroy the culture. They can destroy your team. So culture is really important to me. And having people who have a positive outlook, who are just good people with good character and good values, is important to any organization, despite the talents that they may bring to the table. That's important, but we can't just recruit to talent. We've got to do more than that. So my approach has always been, obviously work really hard. You got to be disciplined. You have to be well organized. You have to over-communicate your vision, over-communicate your value, and over-communicate, the importance of how we communicate with each other, so we set the right expectations. This is what I'm going to do, and this is what you're going to do. And we're going to talk about it, on an ongoing basis, so that we always won't know where we stand. The importance of clearly defined roles and responsibility, the importance of goals for any organization, even for a family and for a team, is always relevant. You got to write it down. People have to commit to it. It's got to be in writing. It can't just be verbalized. But then you also have to, this thing about accountability. You have to hold yourself accountable. As a leader, I'm always holding myself accountable. And I'm making myself vulnerable that, hey, I don't have it right, 100% of the time. I'm making mistakes every day, and I'm failing forward. But at the end of the day, it's important that it's clearly defined, and that the goals and objectives for the organization and for yourself are clearly written and clearly understood, so that there's nothing to guess. So in doing that, I've had a pretty good run. We were the National Firm of the Year for MetLife, Fortune 35 company, and we did it in a time to where it was the worst, we had the worst economy in the country, being Michigan. And it was 2008, and we're the National Firm of the Year when everybody, again, was running to the hills and putting their head on the desk because of the stock market and because of what was happening in the financial services industry. We went to work, and we were recruiting more people than most of the country. We were developing more people, and then we saw people in motion and money in motion that was following them. So I looked at that as, unfortunately, a setback became an opportunity for somebody like me and my leadership team. So I just continue to build on that year after year. And, in 2016, I took the leap of faith after MetLife decided to shut its doors to distribution. And I started Wealth Strategies Financial Group. We've been at it about 4.5 years. Last year, we became a gold standard, winning the International Gamma Gold Award, which really sets us apart from a firm standpoint around the world. And we're going to continue, and again, not to read that print and continue to build on it. But in every category, we were up double digits. And this year, we had some setbacks during COVID in March and April, but we recovered. And, we went from being down 27%. Now we're up like I think 14% as of last week. So to me, that's a good recovery, and we're just trying to become better every day, 1% better every day. So the old adage of iron sharpens iron, and make sure you surround your people with surround yourself with people who are better than you. I kind of try to live by those rules and just find something that I know the areas I'm good at. I know the areas that I struggle with. But I make sure that within the organization, I have somebody who complements that. So case in point, how do you relate this back to, coaching? So if I know I'm a really good recruiter and a good organizer, then I may need to find a really good technician or somebody that can really kind of relate to the day-to-day life of the wrestlers that are on your team. So that's why I think when you start to look at your coaching staff, you do not want to recruit people who are exactly like you, because a lot of unfortunate bad things can happen. So the importance of just having a well-balanced coaching staff and really kind of define, well, what are you trying to accomplish here? What's the vision? What's the goal? It should be shared. And I've challenged, Sean Bourmet with that, and just making sure that everybody understands what's the vision is, what the objectives are for the team, so that we want to be on that same bus, because obviously it takes a whole community to win a national championship. And no better, understood than Penn State. And what they've been able to do. It's been great for the sport. As much as I know they're a competitor, they're really an ally at the same time, because they're good for our sport to show, hey, yes, like Iowa, they can dominate as well. And they have a different approach than Iowa. So they ultimately get the same result, but they may have a different approach. And there's not just one size fits all when it comes to running a company or running a successful team. So I look at that and I see what Cale Sanderson and he's got a phenomenal coaching staff. It's not just Cale that's responsible for all that success. His coaching staff is really second to none, and they do a lot of different things well. And then combined with those combined efforts, what have they won? Like 8 of the last 9 championships or 7 out of the last 9 championships? That's pretty dominant. And so obviously you want to take note of what they're doing, not only with their practice and their recruiting, but also in development. And I know some coaches will challenge, well, they got a huge budget. Well, you know what? You don't always have to have a huge budget to create a winning team. You still have to create the culture. You still have to create, good roles and responsibility and expectations for the coaching staff, so that everybody can kind of row in the same direction. So.
Absolutely. Oh, so much great stuff. But yeah, like you said, having that personal accountability, surrounding yourself with great people, those mindset qualities of a champion, perspective, you roll them all together, you get Mike Amine.
Well, yeah.
No, great stuff. Awesome. I appreciate having you, Mike.
Yeah, it's great to be again with you guys, and really kind of just sharing, the things that I felt like have been, instrumental to really kind of molding me as a man, as a father, as a coach, and everything in between, and as a leader. So I want to continue to do that. And guess who I just have walking in right now? So Malik is just popping in. He's coming back, but he went from working out.
What's going on? How you doing?
Good.
Good. Looking good.
You guys doing the call?
Yeah.
Podcast?
Yeah.
We're just finishing up.
We're just wrapping up. So, hey, I'll get with you. I'll meet you back at your desk.
Good.
Okay. All right.
Great
But
stuff.
anyways, So Malik finished up practice, and then he now comes into here. He's got one more license that he has to obtain. He's got a Series 7, and he's now finishing up to get a Series 66. So we're proud of him, because he's got that work-life balance, and he's got a goal for work as well, not just on the wrestling mat. So, but again, I really appreciate both you and your brothers, and just what you've done for the sport, and still trying to obviously get your name out there with multiple companies, including ours, because the things you guys are teaching, again, they're few and far between. I know a lot of people talk about it. You guys walk the walk. So I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. I'm a big avid user of LinkedIn, and I read all your posts, and when possible, share your posts, and just keep doing what you guys are doing, because it's fantastic for our sport. It's fantastic for our nation. So.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you for all you do. Great stuff. Yeah. Thank you for joining us today again.
Honored. You guys take care.
Family. Take care.
Yep. God bless. Bye-bye.